Some trails come with a view, some come with a body count. America has no shortage of beautiful, brutal places where overconfidence, bad weather, or a single misstep turns a day hike into a search and rescue operation. These are the 10 most dangerous hiking trails in America. Number 10. Bar Trail, Pikes Peak, Colorado. Pikes Peak sits at 14,115 feet above sea level in El Paso County, Colorado, and the Bar Trail is the primary hiking route to its summit. 13 miles one way, gaining 7,400 vertical feet through terrain that spends most of its length above the tree line. The views are extraordinary. The weather is not. Colorado leads the nation in lightning-related fatalities, and Pikes Peak, with its exposure and elevation, is one of the most consistently struck peaks in the state. El Paso County is one of the most lightning-struck counties in Colorado, and since most of the Bar Trail runs above the tree line, there is nowhere to go when an afternoon storm builds over the summit. Afternoon thunderstorms are not occasional events here. In summer, they are nearly daily. The problem is that they typically develop after most hikers have already committed to the route and are nowhere near cover. The altitude compounds everything. Pikes Peak's elevation is high enough to cause genuine altitude sickness in visitors coming from lower elevations, and the combination of altitude, dehydration, and physical exertion has produced numerous medical emergencies on the trail. There is a road and a cog railway to the summit, which means a significant number of people who have no business being above 14,000 feet are regularly in the area, sometimes deciding on impulse to walk down rather than ride. The trail is not technically difficult by mountaineering standards, but it is long, exposed, and completely intolerant of poor timing or poor preparation. The Bar Trail has an additional complication that most high-altitude trails do not. It is famous. Pikes Peak was the inspiration for the song America the Beautiful after Catherine Lee Bates made the summit ascent in 1893 and was moved by what she saw from the top. That cultural weight draws people who are drawn by the idea of the mountain rather than equipped for its reality. The annual Pikes Peak Marathon, run since 1956, sends elite athletes up and back in conditions that require months of specialized training. The standard hiker attempting the same vertical gain without that preparation is operating in a different world, and the mountain does not adjust its weather patterns to account for the difference. Number 9. The Mist Trail, Yosemite National Park, California. The Mist Trail in Yosemite is one of the most popular hikes in the national park system, and that popularity is itself part of the problem. The trail runs past Vernal Fall and Nevada Fall along the Merced River, two of the most photographed waterfalls in North America, and the combination of spectacular scenery and high foot traffic creates conditions where people make decisions they would not make if they were alone and paying attention. The Mist Trail corridor has seen over 40 deaths, with at least 15 attributable to falls into the Merced River, which runs cold, fast, and completely unforgiving. The stone steps that give the trail its name are perpetually wet from spray, and the railings that exist along the route end before the areas above the falls where hikers most frequently go over the edge. Signs warning visitors not to approach the water above the falls are posted extensively and are extensively ignored. The specific danger zone is above Vernal Fall, where the Merced River runs across smooth granite before dropping. Visitors who wade into what looks like a gentle, shallow current above the falls discover quickly that the water is faster and stronger than it appears, and the granite underfoot offers nothing to grab. Yosemite's search and rescue team responds to over 250 incidents per year in the park, and the Mist Trail corridor generates a disproportionate share of those calls. The trail is busy, beautiful, and has a higher mortality rate than it has any right to have given that it is not technically demanding. The water is the killer, and the water looks harmless. The National Park Service has installed signs, railings, and barriers at the most dangerous points near the falls, and has mounted ongoing outreach campaigns specifically targeting the behavior patterns that lead to falls. Visitors climbing over barriers for photographs, wading in the river above the falls, approaching the lip of the drop to look over the edge. These campaigns have had partial success. The Merced River does not care about campaigns. It runs at whatever speed and temperature the snowpack dictates, and in spring and early summer, when the trail is most popular, both are formidable. Number 8. Capitol Peak, Elk Mountains, Colorado. Capitol Peak is a 14er in the Elk Mountains of Colorado, and it occupies a specific category of dangerous that separates it from the other high peaks in the state. It is technically demanding in a way that is not obvious until you are already committed. The approach from the Capitol Creek trailhead is 17 miles round trip with 5,300 feet of elevation gain, a serious undertaking by any standard. But the defining hazard is a section near the summit called the Knife Edge. The Knife Edge is a 150-foot ridge of granite with a drop of over 1,000 feet on both sides. There is no trail across it. Experienced scramblers either hand traverse the left side or, in one of the more psychologically demanding maneuvers in American hiking, straddle the ridge itself and scoot across with one leg hanging on each side over 1,000 feet of air. First-time visitors who have not researched the route sometimes reach the Knife Edge, believing the worst is behind them. It is not. Capitol Peak also sits at an elevation where afternoon lightning storms arrive with the reliability of a bad habit. The rock quality on the upper mountain is variable. The freeze-thaw cycles at altitude break granite in ways that leave holds that look solid but are not. Colorado's 14er community is experienced and generally well-informed about the risks, but Capitol Peak consistently generates accidents involving competent hikers who encountered conditions they did not anticipate. The mountain does not care about your experience level. The Knife Edge especially does not. The approach to Capitol Peak also crosses the lower slopes of a large snowfield on the northeast side of the mountain that holds snow well into summer, requiring an ice axe and basic crampon skills in certain conditions, equipment and skills that standard hiking preparation does not include. The full picture of Capitol Peak is a trail that starts with an arduous multi-mile approach, transitions into a technical scramble, climaxes at a section that would be considered a serious mountaineering obstacle on any other route, and does all of this in a Colorado summer weather environment where an afternoon thunderstorm can transform the Knife Edge from a difficult crossing into a genuinely life-threatening one. It is consistently rated by Colorado mountaineering guides as among the most dangerous 14ers in the state, and Colorado has a great many 14ers to choose from. Number 7, Bright Angel Trail, Grand Canyon, Arizona. Bright Angel Trail is the most accessible, most maintained, and most monitored trail in Grand Canyon National Park. There are water stations. There are ranger stations partway down. The trailhead is right behind the main visitor facilities on the south rim. None of this has made it safe because the danger on Bright Angel is not the trail. It is the physics of the Grand Canyon itself. The trail drops over 4,000 feet from the south rim to the Colorado River, and summer temperatures inside the canyon routinely reach 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, even in shade. That heat, combined with the exertion of climbing 4,380 vertical feet over 9.5 miles, produces roughly 200 heat-related rescues in the park each year, most of them on Bright Angel. The specific trap the trail sets is this: walking down is easy. The canyon is gorgeous. Visitors feel fine for the first 2 hours and continue well past the point at which a round-trip return is reasonable. Then they start climbing back in the heat of the afternoon, dehydrated, having used most of their water on the descent. In June and July 2024 alone, 3 separate hikers died on or near Bright Angel. A 41-year-old who collapsed from heat and overexertion, a 69-year-old found semi-conscious on the river trail, and a 50-year-old found unresponsive near the trailhead. The National Park Service posts signs at the trailhead in multiple languages telling visitors not to hike to the river and back in one day. The signs are not sufficient. People who have never experienced desert heat inside a canyon at the bottom of a mile-deep hole consistently underestimate what it is going to demand of them. The physiological reality of Bright Angel is worth understanding. Heat illness in the Grand Canyon does not arrive gradually. A hiker who feels strong at the 3-mile rest house may be in serious trouble 45 minutes later if they push into the canyon's inner gorge during peak afternoon heat. The inner canyon is effectively an oven. The dark Vishnu schist rock absorbs and radiates heat. The walls block any cooling breeze, and temperatures near the Colorado River regularly exceed the rim temperature by 30 degrees or more. Grand Canyon Corridor Rangers conduct proactive hiker contact specifically on Bright Angel, approaching hikers who appear to be in distress before they deteriorate further. Even with that level of active management, people die here nearly every summer. Number 6. Kalalau Trail, Napali Coast, Kauai, Hawaii. The Napali Coast on Kauai's north shore is one of the most visually dramatic stretches of coastline on Earth. Emerald cliffs dropping directly into the Pacific, waterfalls cutting through jungle vegetation, and a remoteness that feels genuinely primal even with a permit system in place. The Kalalau Trail is 11 miles one way, running along the face of those cliffs from Ka Beach to Kalalau Valley, and it is the only land access to the valley at the trail's end. Kathy Valier, a Kauai resident who has written guidebooks on hiking the island, put it plainly. People have a hard time with some of the drop-offs. The trail bed is narrow and crumbly, and I've talked with many people who have either fallen off the trail or seen it happen. The trail traverses sea cliffs with significant exposure on a surface that crumbles underfoot in places, with sections that narrow to the width of a boot in spots that offer a direct fall to the ocean or rocks below. Rain, and it rains frequently and heavily on the Napali coast, turns the clay and dirt sections into something with the consistency and grip of wet soap. The remoteness is its own hazard. When something goes wrong on the Kalalau Trail, rescue is a helicopter operation. There is no road access, no nearby trailhead, no quick way out. In September 2024, a norovirus outbreak forced a full trail closure after dozens of hikers fell ill, illustrating how the combination of narrow ledges, unpredictable weather, and remote location makes rescue operations uniquely difficult. The trail is technically legal and accessible with a permit. That permit does not come with a guarantee of anything. The river crossings on the Kalalau Trail are a specific and underappreciated danger. Several streams cross the trail on the approach, and after heavy rain, which can arrive at any time of year on the Napali coast, those crossings become fast-moving channels with no bridge and no reliable footing. Flash flooding from upstream rain that a hiker on the coast may never have seen approaching is a documented cause of deaths and injuries on the route. The valley at the trail's end, Kalalau Valley, is 11 miles from the nearest road, and injuries sustained there require a helicopter evacuation that weather may delay for days. The helicopter does not always come quickly. Number 5. Angel's Landing, Zion National Park, Utah. Angel's Landing might be the most famous dangerous trail in the United States. The hike is 5.4 miles round trip with 1,500 feet of elevation gain. Numbers that do not adequately describe the experience of the final half mile, which runs along a narrow sandstone spine with 1,000-foot drops on both sides and chains bolted into the rock as the only handhold between hikers and the canyon floor. As of recent counts, 18 people have died on Angel's Landing, 16 of them from falls. Between 2007 and 2024, Zion National Park recorded 59 total fatalities, with Angel's Landing responsible for more than 18 of them. The National Park Service introduced a permit system in 2022 that limits the number of hikers on the chain section at any one time. Before the permit system, the chain section involved navigating past oncoming hikers on a surface barely wide enough for one person, a logistical problem with consequences measured in altitude. The sandstone is the variable that catches people. When dry, the rock is rough and offers reasonable friction. When wet, from rain, from morning dew, from the spray of other hikers' water bottles, it becomes a different surface entirely. A man died near Scout Lookout in May 2024 in circumstances not fully released by the NPS. The permit system has reduced crowding on the chains, which was a genuine safety improvement. What it has not changed is the fundamental geometry of a narrow ridge above a very large drop, which is not a problem that paperwork solves. The psychological dimension of Angel's Landing is also worth noting. The hike to Scout Lookout, the flat area at the base of the final ridge, is achievable by a wide range of hikers and offers spectacular views on its own. Many visitors intend to stop at Scout Lookout and then, looking up at the chains and seeing other people ascending, decide on the spot to continue. That in-the-moment decision, made at altitude with adrenaline running, bypasses the kind of sober assessment of personal capability that should precede any attempt on the chains. The permit system has introduced at least one structured pause into the process. What happens at Scout Lookout when a hiker looks up at the ridge is something permits cannot fully govern. Number 4. Half Dome Cables, Yosemite National Park, California. Half Dome is the iconic granite formation that appears in essentially every piece of Yosemite imagery ever produced, the image of the place. The route to its summit is 14 to 16 miles round trip depending on the approach, with about 4,800 feet of elevation gain, and the final 400 feet involve climbing a 45-degree granite slope using steel cables bolted into the rock. The cables are a fixed ladder of sorts. They also require that you trust your grip, your footwear, and your judgment on a surface that becomes glass when wet. As of 2026, there have been 25 confirmed deaths on the cables section and the summit of Half Dome, with 6 of the 10 recorded cable fall deaths occurring specifically when the granite was wet. The most recent was in July 2024, when a 20-year-old woman slipped during a sudden storm and fell roughly 250 feet. The permit system limits the number of hikers on the cables to 300 per day, a number that still creates crowding on a 45-degree granite slope with cables as the only anchor. The mist trail section below Half Dome, which most hikers use to access the summit route, adds its own hazards. The wet granite steps and the Merced River crossings described earlier apply here too. And the full round-trip day is long enough that conditions and weather can change multiple times between a 5 a.m. start and a 6 p.m. return. The permit system requires planning. The mountain requires conditions that planning cannot always anticipate. The full Half Dome day also demands a level of sustained physical effort that a significant portion of permit holders underestimate. A 14 to 16 mile round trip with nearly 5,000 feet of elevation gain, much of it on granite steps and exposed terrain, takes between 10 and 14 hours for most hikers. Permit holders who start late, move slowly on the lower sections, or underestimate the time required to descend the cables, find themselves on the upper mountain in the late afternoon, which in summer is exactly when storms develop. The cables themselves come down after Columbus Day weekend each year and are reinstalled in late May, but unsettled weather can occur throughout the installation period. Attempting the cables outside the official installation window, on the bare smooth granite without cable assistance, is a category of decision that rescue personnel encounter repeatedly and find entirely consistent in its outcomes. Number 3. Mount Washington, Presidential Range, New Hampshire. Mount Washington is 6,288 feet high, which by the standards of the American West is a modest hill. By the standards of atmospheric violence concentrated on a single peak, it is something else entirely. On April 12, 1934, the summit weather station recorded a wind speed of 231 miles per hour, the highest wind velocity ever measured at any surface weather station on Earth, a record it held for decades. That was not an unusual event in kind, only in magnitude. Mount Washington generates some of the most severe and rapidly changing weather in the Northern Hemisphere, a product of its position at the intersection of 3 major storm tracks. The Presidential Range has recorded over 160 deaths since 1849, giving it one of the highest fatality rates per vertical foot of any trail in the country. In January 2024, experienced hiker Christopher Roma, 37, died near Mount Guyot during a solo winter attempt in single-digit temperatures and waist-deep snow. The mountain does not kill primarily through technical difficulty. The standard Tuckerman Ravine trail route is a strenuous hike, but not a technical climb for most of its length. What it kills through is weather that appears without meaningful warning, turning a summer day hike into a hypothermia scenario within an hour. The summit has a weather station, a museum, a gift shop, and a road to the top, all of which contribute to a psychological environment in which visitors underestimate what the mountain can do. People who would never attempt a remote peak without preparation will hike toward Mount Washington's summit in trail runners and a light jacket because there is a road at the top. The road does not help you if the weather closes in before you get there. The specific meteorological mechanism behind Mount Washington's extreme weather is worth understanding. The mountain sits at the intersection of three major storm tracks that converge over the northeastern United States, and its position forces those systems upward abruptly, accelerating wind speeds dramatically as air is compressed over the summit. The presidential range runs roughly north-south, perpendicular to the prevailing westerly winds, creating a funnel effect that concentrates wind energy at the summits. The temperature can drop from pleasant spring hiking conditions to a dangerous wind chill within an hour. The Summit Weather Observatory, staffed year-round since 1932, records weather that exceeds any other measurement station in the continental United States for severity and frequency of dangerous conditions. The trail deaths on the presidential range are not primarily concentrated at technical crux sections. They are distributed across routes that are, in calm weather, straightforward mountain hikes. The weather is the technical crux. Number 2, Mount Rainier, Muir Snowfield Route, Washington. Mount Rainier is the highest peak in the Cascade Range at 14,410 feet, an active stratovolcano covered by more glacial ice than any other mountain in the contiguous United States, and by total fatality count, the deadliest mountain in America with over 400 recorded deaths. The summit requires a technical alpine climb, but the Muir Snowfield Route, the approach from the Paradise Trailhead to Camp Muir at 10,000 feet, is often treated as a straightforward high-altitude hike. It is not. The vast majority of Rainier's fatalities have occurred not on the summit climb, but on the approaches, including an alarming number on the section between the Paradise Trailhead and Camp Muir. Crevasses on the glaciers are covered by snow bridges that may or may not hold. Weather systems move across the mountain with extreme speed. Whiteout conditions on the snowfield eliminate landmarks, and the snowfield's visual uniformity makes navigation by sight alone unreliable even in moderate conditions. Hypothermia, falls into crevasses, and being caught in rapidly deteriorating weather are the primary causes of death. The mountain is also, because of its prominence and visibility from the Seattle metropolitan area, a magnet for ambitious hikers who are well prepared by the standards of lowland hiking, but are not technically equipped for glacier travel. The transition from the Paradise parking lot, one of the most developed visitor facilities in the national park system, to the Muir Snowfield above it, is abrupt enough to mislead. The mountain has claimed people who knew what they were doing. It does not provide extra consideration for people who did not. The scale of Rainier's hazards is unusual, even by the standards of major American peaks. The mountain has more glacial ice than any other peak in the lower 48, and the glacier system means that the hazards are not static. Crevasses shift as the ice moves. Snow bridges that were solid on a prior expedition may not be there on the next one. Rockfall from the upper mountain, destabilized by the freeze-thaw cycles and the volcanic heat that persists in the rock, is a documented cause of deaths on the standard routes. The Muir Snowfield approach, which thousands of hikers attempt each year without full mountaineering equipment, crosses terrain that transitions from a compacted snow slope into genuine glacier travel above Camp Muir without a clear visible boundary. The point at which a recreational hike becomes a technical alpine route is not marked. Hikers who continue past that point without the skills to manage glacier travel are in conditions that have killed experienced mountaineers. Number 1, Denali, West Buttress Route, Alaska. Denali, at 20,310 feet, is the highest peak in North America and the highest point in the United States. The West Buttress Route is the standard ascent and the most commonly attempted route on the mountain, a designation that, in the context of Denali, means roughly what standard means on a planet with weather systems that do not exist anywhere else most climbers have been. More than 100 climbers have died attempting to summit Denali. The National Park Service requires all expedition teams to register and undergo a detailed briefing before attempting the mountain, and the park's ranger presence on the West Buttress is substantial for a remote Alaska peak. none of that changes the fundamental conditions. Extreme altitude producing genuine hypoxia in virtually all visitors. Temperatures that can drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill values that exceed any meaningful measurement. Crevasse fields on the approach glaciers, and storm systems that can pin parties at high camp for days with no ability to move in any direction. The altitude alone is serious. At 20,000 feet, the effective oxygen level is roughly half of what it is at sea level. Acclimatization on Denali requires a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. The standard expedition is 21 days. And even with proper acclimatization, altitude sickness, pulmonary edema, and cerebral edema claim climbers every season. The average summit success rate on the West Buttress is approximately 50% in normal conditions, which means that in a given year, roughly half the teams that commit to a full Denali expedition, teams that have trained, permitted, and invested months of preparation, do not reach the top. The summit success rate is not the fatality rate, but it gives an honest picture of how often the mountain simply refuses entry on its own terms, and how little an expedition's preparation determines the outcome when conditions turn severe. It is the kind of mountain where even the decision not to summit requires careful execution. Coming down in deteriorating weather, with a team that is fatigued and oxygen depleted, is when most of Denali's fatalities occur. It sits at number 1 not because it is the most visited dangerous trail in America, it is not, but because, of all the trails on this list, it is the one where preparation, experience, and correct decision-making are most indispensable, and where the margin between a successful expedition and a fatal one is thinnest. The NPS Denali Mountaineering Rangers operate a base camp on the Kahiltna Glacier at 7,200 feet and maintain a high camp presence on the West Buttress throughout the climbing season, which runs from late April to early July. They perform rescues, evaluate injured and altitude-sick climbers, and have the authority to turn back expeditions they assess as dangerously unprepared. Even with that level of proactive management, teams die on Denali in years where conditions are severe and judgment fails. The mountain is the ceiling of American hiking in every sense. The highest point, the most demanding conditions, and the most unforgiving environment for the consequences of getting something wrong. Everything on this list has killed people. Denali has killed people with decades of relevant experience who simply ran out of options when the weather decided to change its mind. If this one had you gripping your armchair, hit that like button and subscribe. There is a lot more of the American outdoors worth knowing about before you lace up.